shouldn't Americans be concerned about a president that is retweeting unhinged things in the middle of the night, then waking up the next morning and screaming at reporters, calling women, in that case, a black woman, for the second time in a week, a dumb person?
The idea that people now are calling him unhinged with it. You've always called him unhinged with his tweets. I mean, that is not...
Guys, last night on Abby Phillip show, MAGA pundits were humiliated live on CNN when they tried to defend Trump's personal attacks on reporters. Guys, it really pisses me off that we've allowed our politicians, people like Trump, to regularly just dismiss questions, insult reporters to deflect, or just flat out lie in their answers. I mean, why are politicians allowed to just ban reporters or agencies from having access just because the politician doesn't want to answer questions? How is that free press? The politicians work for us. They're answerable to us. It should be an obligation for every politician, especially the president, to answer every question of every reporter. Guys, remember a few months back when Trump said "quiet piggy" to a female Bloomberg reporter when she asked him about the Epstein files? I mean, this is his way of deflecting questions. He knows his past is all effed up, being friends with Epstein and all that island stuff. So now he says stuff like this to deflect questions. Now I'm going to play some clips from the show. I'll give my opinion as we go.
Tonight, erratic and unhinged. That's what critics are calling Donald Trump's behavior over the last 24 hours. From a social media repost accusing Barack Obama of treason to his outburst against reporters. Over the course of an hour and 15 minutes overnight, Trump posted more than 50 times, parroting debunked claims and firing off personal attacks, prompting critics to question his mental state. But today, as the president departed for one of his most consequential foreign trips in recent memory, a reporter's basic question about the ballooning cost of his ballroom seems to have set him off.
We have a ballroom that's under budget. It's going up right here. I've doubled the size of it because we obviously need that. And we're right now on budget, under budget, and ahead of schedule. I doubled the size of it, you dumb person. Double the size. You are not a smart person.
Nothing gets him more worked up, it seems, than criticism of his ballroom, of all things. What's going on with the president? And why shouldn't Americans be concerned about a president that is retweeting unhinged things in the middle of the night, then waking up the next morning and screaming at reporters, calling women, in that case, a black woman, for the second time in a week, a dumb person?
I think we have to be honest here, whether you like him or hate him. This is not a new Donald Trump, right? We have seen this man speak the way that he speaks, post the way that he posts. I think he was famous for his tweets long before he ran for office, and yet 80 million Americans voted him right back in. So I think the question is, why did America think this is the president that we need, right? We can debate whether you like it or not. For some reason, the majority of the country thought this was the man for the moment. They like the way he speaks. They like the way he posts. They like what he puts out there.
Is it okay?
If majority of the country thinks so.
So if the majority of the country thinks that, like, the earth is flat, that's okay?
Well, that's why we have elections, right? We both know the earth's not flat, but I think...
And we both know that behavior is not okay.
Republicans for a long time were telling me, Joe Biden couldn't do the job. A majority of Americans elected him too. That didn't stop you from criticizing him for everything under the sun, and perhaps rightfully so. But I'm just wondering, why is there a different bar for this president?
Well, I don't see it as a different bar. I think people are criticizing it. You're criticizing it. It gets criticized by Republicans and Democrats all the time. I think the concession is that this is just not new. Right. The idea that people now are calling him unhinged with it. You've always called him unhinged with his tweets. Exactly. I mean, that is not a new story.
You're right.
And I think it is a fair criticism, right, that it's not presidential. I don't think it's particularly presidential, and I wish he wouldn't do it because I think it ends up causing him a lot more headache than he needs. But it's also a case of you can't change that. That is who he is.
You guys are right that this is not a new Donald Trump, but the situation that we're in is new. It is unique. We've never had a war going on while gas prices are spiking, while inflation is spiking, and while the debt is just ballooning. I mean, DOGE at the beginning of Trump's term was purported to cut costs, right? Cost overruns were supposed to be cut. Not only did they miserably fail at that, but now the deficit is up. And now he's pursuing a $1 billion ballroom. He's pursuing a $1.2 trillion golden... The ballroom?
Yes. The ballroom is privately funded.
Well, they're now
You're
asking
talking
for
about
the Secret
security.
Service.
You're talking about security, and it's 20%.
Well, let's talk
That's separate.
We can talk about the security
Let's
piece,
talk
yeah.
about that because I think this is also a big topic on Capitol Hill today. Lots of Republicans skeptical. There is a $1 billion price tag that was labeled as being for the president's ballroom project. And when you look at the details, it's really $220 million for the White House complex, which includes some things that seem to be related to the ballroom and perhaps things that are not. And then the rest of it seems to be hundreds of millions of dollars to the tune of nearly $800 million for things that seem to be part of the normal job, frankly, of the Secret Service, of DHS. And look at those numbers and just remember that the Department of Homeland Security received a budget last year that was 2 times its normal budget. It was $190-something billion that they just received in funding, and now they're trying to justify $1 billion for all of these things.
Yeah, well, I think we may have lost our ability to see outrage here.
Guys, to be honest, I'm praying for the day when one glorious reporter who just put in for retirement or anything like that just goes off on this clown president. I mean, I wish some reporter with balls would just let him know what a corrupt effing person he truly is. And I would love it even more if it were a woman, because that would make him go so mad. His head would just explode with anger. Guys, it really pisses me off that we have totally normalized the rude behavior of this clown president. I mean, if any other previous U.S. president had ever dared to say something like this to any reporter, he would have been destroyed and shamed by the media and general public. But in today's political climate, everything is so normalized. Everything is just another Tuesday. And at this point, I feel really bad for the reporters who have to put up with this madman. They don't insult him back because they fear getting fired from their media houses because his administration starts going after the livelihood of reporters who call out the orange man.
Because there's so much every single day that is coming out of this White House that is outrageous, that is, potentially corrupt. I mean, it's interesting about the private donors. I'm actually not so keen on the private donors. Horse trading, that we know has gone on. But I think people, and this is very worrisome, I think something we've all touched on, people's pain, which is economic right now, big time, coupled with the turning away from reliable news sources and the fragmentation of news and the ownership of the control of information by a handful of very powerful people, some of which I'm sure have donated to the ballroom. Mm-hmm. That's all part of a very worrisome turn towards oligopoly in this country.
And it's such an important point. And I just want to note, like the way you're pointing out, the connection between this ballroom and the economic pain that people are feeling. You're not the only person who made note of that. Jim Justice, let me just read this quote. He says, "I can't get my hands around the fact that a lot of people are really hurting and they see $1 billion, and $1 billion is an awful, awful, awful lot of money." Mm-hmm. When you see that B in front of a number, it's like, what?
What? Yeah. It's almost too hard to conceptualize for most people. $1 million is almost too hard to conceptualize for some people. Quite honestly, $100,000 in most Americans' lives right now feels so far out of reach. This is, just to continue on your point, this is part of the strategy, though. I actually don't think, I think Donald Trump is a bit unhinged at times. And I also think he's pretty strategic. I think he wants, about it. I think, we're talking about him. Zone. We're flooding the zone. And so we could either talk about these tweets or him calling a reporter unjustifiably and disrespectfully dumb and stupid, or we could keep our eye on the ball and that we're in a war that we have no plans to get out, that Americans are suffering, and there's a B in front of this thing called a ballroom. Not just the ballroom, the B is for billions. And so 80 million Americans did vote for him, but I'm not exactly sure if they voted exactly for this. And I just implore the American people not to be distracted. Yeah. Democrats or Republicans, not to be distracted, because we deserve better than what we are getting right now from our elected officials, particularly the president.
A triumphal arch, even the renovation of the reflecting pool, which, the reflecting pool always needs to be renovated, it seems. All of these are things that seem to be distractions.
They are.
Yeah.
Young people get a lot of flack for having a lack of focus or being easily distractible, but I see the President of the United States as a more distractible person than any young person right now. Again, he's pursuing this ballroom, he's pursuing the reflecting pool, but he also wants a 60% increase in the military budget to refund and repay for the missiles that we used against Iran to get nothing in the first place. So it is economic calamity, and Donald Trump is focused on side projects. Very, very unfocused right now.
Well, that's a good segue for our next topic. Next for us.
Guys, I wonder if it annoys MAGA that their leader has spent more time trying to get a ballroom than he did trying to build a wall at the southern border. I mean, guys, I really don't understand his obsession with the ballroom. He's acting like a goddamn child at this point. He literally tweeted on X saying, China has a ballroom, so why shouldn't the US? I mean, what the F? And even if we follow this logic, China has a high-speed rail. So should the USA. China has basic healthcare. So should the USA. And China has advanced infrastructure. So should the USA. But no, Trump doesn't want to talk about any of that. He just wants his ballroom because he has the brain of an 8-year-old. Guys, what this clown doesn't seem to understand is that at the time when he's so desperate to waste $1 billion on a building, millions of Americans don't have access to basic healthcare. Millions are homeless, millions can't afford basic groceries, and millions are jobless. But he doesn't give a damn about any of that. He could spend that money on something more useful. But no, he just wants a ballroom. The man is so out of touch with reality that he really seems to think the White House ballroom is an urgent national issue. Guys, I think the mentality behind this ballroom obsession is probably that he believes the Democrats would undo all his dumb policies when they get back in power, and if he can't just get the ballroom built, he thinks he can cement his legacy like the Lincoln or Jefferson memorials. He's thinking that, I truly believe it. Alright guys, that's it for today's video. I'll see you soon with another one.